Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Out of Left Field. Graham and Chris here with you. I guess, Chris, sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for, because we were saying last week how, man, not a damn thing has been happening in Major League Baseball. And then we started prepping for the show, and I had like 14 windows of stuff open that we finally kind of weeded and whittled down to about a half dozen. A ton of stuff going on. Started last week, which we'll get about here in a second. We put up on Facebook, got some great discussions and comments from all of you out there. So let's put the ball in play and talk about the biggest move I think that's going on, and that's obviously the Mets signing Jay Bruce.
Yeah, we'll go with that one. The Mets signing Jay Bruce. No,
it is a move.
It's a move.
Certainly not the biggest, which really happened over the weekend, and then today, right. Monday, we'll get to that here in just a second with your team.
So Jay Bruce basically did what I think a lot of us thought might happen at the middle of last year when the Mets traded him to Cleveland. We all thought that maybe Jay Bruce might pull a
Chapman.
A Chapman, right? I don't know, all this Chapman.
That's exactly the analogy I was going to use. So well done.
And head right back to New York, and which he's done now. And good on him. I mean, 3 years, $39 million, and New York gets back a veteran guy who's going to really help them really bring that team up into solid mediocrity next year. I think. No, I think it'd be good for them.
Solid mediocrity. That's the worst or best backhanded compliment, backhanded comment. There was really a compliment there. Not a bad signing at all. I don't think. I don't completely understand it. This team is, for all intents and purposes, and what needs to be, I think. I don't want to say the word rebuild. I think that's way too far done. But there's a very real possibility that the big three are never going to amount to much. We don't know what we're going to get with DeGrom. Syndergaard, you're hoping he's back to normal, but I mean the way his injuries have happened with the finger and then the lat strain, all that stuff, he kind of took a little bit of the same thing from Matt Harvey. Can you trust him to tell you when he's hurting, what's going on? And then the whole Harvey debacle as a whole anyway is just kind of clouding that ball club.
At what point do we take a step back and look at this situation objectively and say that DeGrom might be a big league bust?
I don't think he'd be a bust. I mean, we saw some really, really good pitching from him. I don't think we're going to say that he is a bust. I don't see it happening.
I guess maybe only in the context of what he was supposed to be. But then you could say the same thing about Noah Syndergaard too. In the context of what Noah Syndergaard was supposed to be, he's just not.
Right, and I think that's more where I'm concerned with that team, and I get we're getting a little bit beyond where we want to go, and we'll get into that more so here in the next couple of weeks as we start to break down all 30 teams in Major League Baseball. A $39 million contract backloaded at $13 million the last 2 years. He gets $10 million this year, and then 13 in 19 and 20. I don't know, man. To me, it's just kind of, it's just kind of surprising that, you trade Granderson, you got rid of Addison Reed, who now signed with the Minnesota Twins. David Wright is a shell of what he used to be, and unfortunately, I think really it is kind of just taking up space on that roster. So, if Bruce was happy there, then good on him. Like you said, good on him for going to where he wanted to go, and basically getting, what he wanted and what he has come to the point where he's in his career he can go where he wants.
Right, and assuming that he can consistently produce 35, 36 home runs a year, 90, 95, 100 RBI a year, between him and Yoenis Cespedes, that's a pretty decent heart of the lineup style pair. And if I'm the Mets GM right now, I'm kind of sitting in my office going, yeah, I think I made a good deal, and I don't think anybody can really question me about that. 3 years, $39 million in the grand scheme of Major League Baseball is not a lot of money. And I think for what he did last year, although his batting average was pretty low, as far as between both teams for the entire year, hitting 254, his batting average was kind of low, but he did knock 37 dingers. He did knock across 94 ribbies, and he played 153 games. And if you can get a guy to play 150, 155 games and knock that kind of numbers in, I think you've done well.
Right, and we put this out on our social media page, Out of Left Field, with Chris and Graham on Facebook. Of course, we're part of the Grueling Truth Network. Check us out at Grueling Truth on Twitter and thegruelingtruth.net for all your news, stories, everything boxing, football related, especially with football playoffs, which we will probably discuss just a little bit here today and throughout the next couple of weeks as we get into the Super Bowl. I had a chance to talk with Rob Riggle this weekend, which was absolutely fantastic. Great guy. Excuse me, but we put it on Twitter, should Jay Bruce have signed with somebody besides the Mets, or is this a good signing? John Bone Steele says no, Jay Bruce should have signed exactly where he did. Flexibility for the lineup, power bat to support Cespedes, a positive clubhouse influence will lead the Callahan remake of the team. It's a win-win. Not so good comment there. Appreciate it, John. Also, Kervin Delgado says smart move by the Mets. And I get James Mack saying, hell yeah, he should have. Colin David goes, can't be too picky and the money is good, plus a small no trade clause. And that is true. And we'll talk about that in a second. Corey Smith says, I think Mets got a bargain or Bruce just really loved playing for him. Matthew Mullen says, this is going to be the worst fielding outfield in the league again. Bad move for both. The Mets should pull the plug and trade all their pieces to build a truly great farm system while they can. Getting your hands on 10 top 100 prospects is their best bet. He goes on to say if they think they can get another infielder and put Bruce at first, they are looking at a first-round exit at best, but they might get a wild card win. Interesting, Matthew. That's something that we will discuss.
To Matthew's point, I have read that Jay Bruce is probably going to be asked to play most of his starts at first base this year while Dominic Smith tries to prove that he's an everyday type ball player. Until he does, I think Jay Bruce will be playing in the infield, and to be honest, you can call him the worst fielding right fielder or the worst fielding outfielder on the team, but he's played nearly his entire professional career in right field, and while he's not a Gold Glove type player, he's not a defensive liability. And so I think you're being a little bit rough on him, but I agree. I think that him at first base gives the Mets a better opportunity to win than Dominic Smith.
Right, and to the point about the no trade clause, basically what he will have the option of doing is that he can select 5 teams annually that he does not want to be traded to. So, without consent on both sides. So, not a full Justin Verlander type no trade clause, but it's there, gives him a little bit of control. And I think here's where I'll say this, and this kind of popped into my head as we were just talking. I wonder if what the Mets are doing, especially as they're backloading this contract at $13 million the next couple of years after the 10 this year, they might see the possibility of Bruce performing well again and just kind of basically double dipping in trade value for him. I don't think it's beyond Sandy Alderson to go, well, we got some stuff for him last time and he still performed. He's going to basically be looked at the same way again. And, even if we have to eat $3 million each year, the last two, and the other guys eat 10, that's still a relatively small price to pay for what you might get back. So, maybe long term, I think they might be looking more at what they can get back from him long term than what he will produce. But an interesting signing, to say the least. Not one that I am particularly enthralled by. I don't think it made sense for Bruce, who had a decent season and could have gone somewhere where his bat could be put to more use for a deeper run. But hey, if he's happy there and that's where he wanted to go, have at it.
I agree. Speaking of people who we knew were going to get traded, or who we knew were going to move, but not necessarily did we know where they were going to move, because even though we sort of thought that Jay Bruce might pull an Aroldis Chapman to go back to New York, I think that we were both sort of intrigued by the lateness of that move in free agency. Thought there was interest from the Giants, there was interest from several other teams. We didn't really know where he was going to go.
And I did think that the Giants or the Royals, with the possibility of Hosmer and Kane going, would have made a really good a spot for him to land.
Right. Yeah. And, and we weren't, I won't say we were wrong. I'm not going to say we were wrong, because we weren't wrong, because we didn't really make any solid predictions as to where he was going to go. However, we did make a pretty solid prediction as to where Gerrit Cole was going to go. And yeah, we were wrong. Because as far as you and I were concerned, it was either he was going to stay with the Pirates or he was going to go to the New York Yankees.
Yep.
That was really where we had him projected. Nope. Gerrit Cole has been traded to the Houston Astros, really shoring up what was already an incredibly strong rotation behind Justin Verlander and Lance McCullers. I mean,
Dallas Keuchel.
This is Dallas Keuchel.
And Keuchel just got a 13 or 14 and change deal, a 1 year avoiding arbitration deal with the Astros. So yeah, they are.
This is a scary
strong one through four. It is. Yes.
And with all the tools that they have on offense, and then that strong of a first four, I gotta think that a move like this for a Gerrit Cole, I assume a number 3, maybe number 4 guy.
Yeah,
I think you could probably safely put him at number 3.
That's the big thing. I think that you're going in the right spot. That I think moving him back out of that ace role where he has been the last couple of years and has struggled the last couple of years in Pittsburgh, I think he will fit nicely behind a huge veteran staff. I think you might see Keuchel become the number 2 even, depending on age and how Verley feels. But, I mean, either way, Keuchel, Verlander, Cole, you put them where you want, and then McCullers at the back end and whoever else you want to have at 5. I feel bad for the American League.
I think you have to – this move has to make the Houston Astros the favorite to repeat in the American League.
I think possibly, so. I mean, they're keeping the majority of their pieces.
Possibly the favorites to repeat. Now, the stumbling block there is going to be the New York Yankees, obviously. Because we saw what the New York Yankees were capable of doing in the playoffs last year. And when you add a bat like Stanton, that's a wild card. That's the kind of thing that makes you say, well, the New York Yankees are obviously never out.
Right. And I mean, the Yankees somehow managed to get by the Indians, which I still to this day don't know what happened with Corey Kluber. And that's, I mean, something that is just he'll have to figure out, and I'm sure he'll come back as dominant as he has been the last couple of years. As it comes to the Yankees, I think what gets you is that you still have a couple of guys out there in the Arrieta and Darvish guys we talked about, obviously last week. Excuse me, Jeremy Hellickson still out there. So plenty of options for the Yankees to go and add to that rotation, but you are not going to find the quality of 1, 2, 3, even 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that you're going to have. And as long as they can stay healthy, and that's what got them this year, which made you and I worried mid-season, was the injury bug did not seem to stay away from Houston. And they managed to kind of rally behind that city with everything that happened with Hurricane Harvey and end up bringing the Commissioner's Trophy back to Houston. But let's not forget, he had his all-star year in Gerrit Cole, has all-star year in 15, went 19-8, a 2.6 ERA. Very rarely is he a guy who throws all 9. He only has one complete game. That was in 2016. But he threw, and only twice has he thrown more than 200 innings. That was in 15. He threw 208. Last year he threw 203. Aside from those 2 seasons, he has been at 138 or well below that. The other 2 were at 117 and 116. So, the longevity is what's going to make you curious, and that's where I think A.J. Hinch, we saw that he, I think for the most part, managed his bullpen quite well. And right. Some of the Gerrit Cole games might end up being more of those bullpen games, but when you have horses like the Keuchels and the Verlanders who can get you deeper into games, the nice thing is that should allow you to balance out some of that workload that you might have to put on that bullpen when Cole takes the bump. Now, a sub 500 record in 16 and even at 12-12 last year, yeah, I think you made the right point that putting him kind of right in that little happy medium spot there, is going to take a lot of the pressure off him. I think he'll thrive in that environment.
No, I think he will too. I think it's going to be great for him. And if you can get the sort of, while I realize that he gave up quite a few runs last year, probably, more than you want to see a guy who throws 200 innings give up. He had 96 earned runs in 203 innings, ERA of 4.26. It's harsh. It's a lot of runs to give up in a single season.
31 long balls and 55 walks.
It was the home run. It was the home run that really hurt him. But pulling him out of that high-pressure ace role is going to help this guy, I think, quite a bit. And when you look at his other numbers, they're not bad. A whip at 1.25, struck out 196 and only walks 55 on the year in 203 innings. I mean, he's not the kind of guy who I would say, well, maybe we have a spot for you. No, this is a solid 3 pitcher. And
what you hope is that last year was a blip on the radar that doesn't happen again. Because like you said, last year, I mean, 1.5 homers per 9. I mean, that's scary. I mean, that, every start he's giving up a long ball practically. That scares you.
What you hope is that you can find a happy medium between the numbers he was able to put up in 2015 and what he did this year. He was at half a home run per 9 in 2015. He's at 1.5 this year. If you can get him down to about 0.7,
where he wasn't. Yeah, I think
where he was last year, a couple years ago.
I think his 2014. Also, I think his 2014 line is what you're talking about. I think it's what fits him. 8, over 8 hits per 9. Under 1, 2.5 walks per 9, and 9 strikeouts per 9, with a 3.45 K to walk ratio
of 3. Right.
Yep.
Strikeout to walk ratio of 3.45. And not only that, but I would like to see him find a happy medium in innings too, between that 2014-2015. You don't want him to go 208.
Right.
Because that's not his role. Right. But if he went 180, 185 innings and put that kind of line together and maybe brought that ERA down to about a 3.3, I think he'd probably be one of the most solid number 3 guys in the American League.
And I think that's kind of what's funny about this is we're talking about a guy who was the clear-cut number 1 on a team, was the opening day starter the last, I think, 2 or 3 seasons, had an all-star nod in 2015. And basically what we're saying is that, you know what? You don't need to be an all-star. And I get that sounds kind of maybe degrading to a point, like, wow, you're just kind of poo-pooing. No, but that's not what we're saying. Is that, you know what? At this point, just not know your role. Like, you have he has the capability to be an all-star. And if he pitches that way, fantastic for Houston and sucks for everybody else.
Everybody else.
But if he doesn't pitch that way, but he kind of has that kind of in-between area that, you know what, made everybody look at him as being a big piece, great. Like, what you're doing is you're going to get paid. You're going to, whether it be you stay in Houston or, you know what, hey, I found my niche, I'm going to go somewhere else. But, I mean, let's think about this. A guy who has kind of been an all-star almost, I want to say, I hate to say off and on because that sounds kind of, I don't know, kind of odd. Is Zach Greinke. You get certain, he's a 4-time all-star in 14 years. And he was, he was decent with the Royals, but it was really when he had to go somewhere and kind of be that guy, he flourished where? Behind Clayton Kershaw. Now, yes, he did well this past year, 17-7, but he's a guy, he doesn't, doesn't command, doesn't want the spotlight. And I'm not saying that Gerrit Cole and Zach Greinke have the same personality, but some guys just kind of find their niche when they can just be that guy, go in, do their job, and they aren't looked at as the arm that has to carry the team. So it's a great signing or a great move by the Astros. Obviously, it takes Yu Darvish. I think the Astros were one of the 6 teams he said that he was considering. Well, that should be done. If the Astros signed Yu Darvish, then I'm calling EA Sports and just saying, hey, just give me the 2018 game now, and I'm playing as the Astros from here on out, because there is no way you can tell me that a starting 5 of Keuchel, Verlander, Cole, McCullers, and Darvish is not a video game, construct that somehow you pulled when you turned off the trade declination. So, yeah, definitely going to be interesting, and it opens the door of where we thought the Pirates were going to do, which was start getting rid of assets, start getting rid of prime guys, start bringing in young assets, because the door has shut on what that team was in the early 2000 teens. The Cardinals came around, the Cubs are now here, and I feel bad for Clint Hurdle, but you've got to be feeling kind of happy right now.
To be fair, though, I mean, I agree with what you just said, but to be fair, you can't tell me that Justin Verlander, Dallas Keuchel, Lance McCullers, Gerrit Cole, and then, I mean, pick your poison, Charlie Morton, Brad Peacock, either or at number 5. You can't tell me that's not just
well,
I mean, that is a fantasy baseball league dream.
Yeah.
If you manage to draft all five or six of those guys, based just on pitching alone, you were projected to win your fantasy football or your fantasy baseball league. Based just on pitching alone.
If I'm AJ Hinch, I just cracked the top on a cold one, kicked my feet up. I'm kind of admiring the design of the World Series ring I'm going to be getting here in just a couple of months. And I'm kind of already, I'm thinking in my head, I wonder which parade route we want to do for this year.
Right. Exactly. I mean, good for the Astros, man.
Yeah, man.
Good for them. You knew they were going to make moves. You knew they weren't going to rest on their laurels. They weren't just going to sit back and bask in the victory.
Right.
They were going to be working. They were going to be working hard, like they've been working hard for the last 3 or 4 years, really trying to get ready for this last run or this last World Series.
Yeah, I mean, breaking news: the Astros are going to be the team that Chris and I both agree are the favorite to repeat in the AL West. From there, we'll figure everything out. But they're going to be a damn good team. Another team that. Go ahead.
Unless I see some moves pitching-wise from the Yankees, spoiler alert, they're going to be my American League champion pick too.
Another team that we have both you more than me, obviously, but have both kind of been confused with have been the Giants. For the last 2 years, teams that had, a team that had really, I think what was easily a playoff caliber roster, especially 2 years ago. This year they signed Melanson, or this past year they signed Melanson. Think, okay, they're fixing some of the holes. Obviously, you go to opening day, the home team won, but you were wearing orange and black, which didn't bode well for you. Bumgarner hits the 2 dingers, ends up losing the game. He ends up getting, the dirt bike thing, all that stuff. And the Giants have kind of just been this conundrum of mediocrity is not the right word, but they're kind of just this. They've looked like the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's really, okay, we got a piece, we think we fixed it, but no, you just, and they weren't making the necessary moves to fix the pieces. Well, one of the holes they've had has been outfield. It's been outfield help.
They look so much like the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Right. Yeah.
They have looked like the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're there. They're almost there. They're getting there, and then all of a sudden they pull back and they pull back and they pull back, and they've looked so much like the Pittsburgh Pirates that it's not going to be a surprise to see Andrew McCutchen in center field next year, because it's a one-for-one swap, I think, at this point. Although, some of the additions they made in the offseason so far, especially the big one, Evan Longoria. Right. At this point, you can't say Evan Longoria is the big one because they just signed Andrew McCutchen. So, realistically, name-wise, here's the thing. So, the offseason for the Giants and the offseason for the Yankees have looked very similar this year, right? Both teams have added huge names. The problem is that the Giants have added huge names that are in their 30s, and the Yankees have added huge names that are in their 20s, one of whom is both teams have added league MVPs.
Right.
Unfortunately, the Giants added one that was league MVP 5 or 6 years ago, whereas the Yankees added last year's reigning MVP. So, what are you going to do?
Well, to be fair, the Yankees did sign a 30-something. They did. A $30 million a year guy, but he's a 30-something. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just making it fair. That's all I'm trying to do. No, and you're right. And I think here really these moves are really about the same. And I mean that in really in a good way. Both McCutchen and Longoria number-wise sit relatively close to each other. McCutchen with a bit more pop in the bat, but both these guys are 31 years or 30 and 31 years old. McCutchen 30, Longo 31. Both right now are at the end of their contracts. 2017 or 2018, rather, I believe will be the last year. I know it's the last year for McCutchen as I'm going down here through Longoria. I'm sorry, Longoria is signed through 2023. So they got a lot long. They have him until he's 37. So a pretty good chunk the Giants will be holding on to here. But no, I agree with you that I think really that this McCutchen move is good. It gives the Giants that depth and that defense they need in center. McCutchen proved last year that he still had the ability to play, and I don't think there's any love lost at this point. I think he's leaving Pittsburgh kind of pissed off, and he's not totally wrong. He was done pretty dirty by the team last year. They tried to move him to Washington. Didn't work because they went out and got Adam Eaton, who then obviously tore the ACL and the knee. Thankfully, he should be back this year, and that's going to be a scary lineup as well in D.C. But, I like this move. I think it gives Cutchen kind of a new lease on life. He's a right-handed batter. We'll see how much oppo stuff he can do to use kind of that deep gap. But if I'm a Giants fan, and I'm obviously not nearly as big a Giants fan as you are, my parents enjoy watching that team. I think this is a nice move. Yeah, you're getting him at the end of one more year. You're paying him, pretty much $12.25 million this year. Pirates picking up $2.5 million of the contract. That's not bad for someone of his caliber. And if you can go ahead and get some defensive help out there, that takes you a long way into challenging the Dodgers and the Rockies and Diamondbacks for that NL West. I think we're still waiting to see what JD Martinez will do before we figure out just how good those Diamondbacks will be.
Right. And I think the end-all, be-all, bottom line of this is that this is a good move for both the Giants and the Pirates. They're getting back a couple of prospects who they can control well into the 2020s. 2023, I think, is the one when the first prospect, when they lose control of the first prospect. But they're getting back a couple of prospects that they can control well into the 2020s. That's what they need. That's what we're looking for from the Pirates, is to rebuild. And to do that, you need young guys. You need guys who are up-and-coming stars. And I think that's what they're getting back, not only in this trade, but in the trade that they did for Gerrit Cole. And so it's good for the Pirates. And it's also good for the Giants. You can't tell me that having an Andrew McCutchen, who as recently as 5 years ago was the most valuable player in the National League, who as recently as 2 years ago, 3 years ago, finished top 5 in MVP voting in the National League, and who last year made a very convincing argument that he was the best choice at center field after Starling Marte was suspended for PED use. When they suspended Marte and he went back to center field every day, he made a very convincing argument as to why he should stay there when Marte came back, and he did. So you can't tell me.
And that really ended up being kind of what you and I said, which was going to be kind of a big middle finger up to that front office saying you wanted to move me and think you knew better. Watch what I'm going to do.
And as a Giants fan, it's going to be fun to have a superstar back wearing 22 again, to be honest. That's Will Clark's number. It's been vacant for a long time. It's going to be fun to have a superstar wearing it again.
Is his not retired in San Fran?
It is not.
Wow, okay.
He's neither a Hall of Famer nor is his number retired, though I disagree with both of those decisions.
Here is the one thing that I would love to see from the Giants, and I think they have some of the space to do it. Lorenzo Cain is still a free agent. Coming from Kansas City, he's been productive. Has looked good. He's going to be 32 coming into this season. Career 290 hitter, hit 300 last year / 363, 440. Solid stuff. Has not a power guy, 57 career home runs, but he's a guy who gets on base and moves himself around. Good in steals. You'll see him double digits, close to usually at or above 20. Kind of a strikeout guy. But what I would love to see the Giants do is sign Lorenzo Cain, get him for 4 or 5 years. And I think it's one of those moments where at that point you figure out defensively who's more comfortable where, and you figure out McCutchen or Cain, one of those guys are going to be one of your corners. You probably at that point can move Hunter Pence out of the outfield, which I know is kind of one of their goals. Maybe you keep Hunter Pence in that right field corner. But I think a Lorenzo Cain, Andrew McCutchen type outfield could be really, really solid for that Giants team. We'll see where that comes down the pike, but I do think that would end up being
those are two guys who are going to battle for that center field position, though. They're both going to want it.
Right. But I think at that point, I mean, all right, what's going to be best here? And we saw McCutchen play some corner outfield last year. At least he has a little bit of experience with it, and that that could end up being, hey, yeah, you might not like it, but if we can get a ring out of the deal, I don't think you'll be too bummed out, when you're wearing hardware on your finger.
Right. Exactly.
So we keep it in. We'll move over to the American League now. Josh Donaldson, who was down here in Florida last couple of days, guy can drive a golf ball that is about as insanely far as he can drive a baseball. It is insane. He was out here at the Diamond Resorts Invitational, Mohawk and all. It was actually kind of cold here the other day. I mean, we're talking windy in the low 50s, 20-mile-an-hour. It was not good golfing weather and not fun to stand out there. But Donaldson and the Blue Jays have agreed to a deal that will help avoid arbitration. He will get $23 million next year, for all intents and purposes, a franchise tag. This is an all-time record payout for an arbitration-eligible player on a one-year deal. He will be in a free agent next year. Basically, they went to arbitration and went ahead and instead of trying to go through the hearing, just went ahead and gave him the deal. Slow start last year, no doubt, but man, he came back. He looked good. Kind of struggled up to the All-Star break from August 1st to the end of the season. /302, 410, 698 with 22 home runs and 227 plate appearances. So he ended up finishing the season at a 270 average, 385 on base, and a 559 slugging percentage. So, like I said, didn't start out great, finished well, which is what you want to see. That the guy, he doesn't stay frustrated. He keeps on going, and hopefully brings him back into a solid year, which should take him, I guess, deeper into free agency next year when he'll be 32. But, man, again, he's on a team that, as we're going to talk about, I don't think neither you nor I have a ton of expectations from the birds north of the border.
No, and I don't expect them to do much of anything this year. Josh Donaldson is a great ball player, and I think that he definitely got the most money that he was going to get from the Blue Jays. And good for him for he set an arbitration record. Good for him. But look for him to move in free agency next year, and probably pretty quickly. I doubt that the Blue Jays are going to offer him enough money to stay there, because they're just not. They have no prospects for finishing in the top of that division, in my opinion.
He could be somebody to replace Bryce Harper. Same kind of flash and flamboyance in D.C., and if Harper goes, if Harper stays, you can get him on the opposite corner. With Adam Eaton would be a fantastic outfield for the Nationals. But if Harper does go, I think you could see the Nats make a big push for him to kind of try and offset that loss of power that you'll see when Harper goes elsewhere.
I think that would be a best case scenario for the Nationals. But if something like that does happen, look for the Nationals to be favorites in the National League at that point. I mean, realistically, they've been in the playoffs the last few years with Dusty Baker and made some deep pushes. And I think they could really get around a Cubs team or a Dodgers team in that National League Championship Series with an outfield like the one you just described. And the bats like the ones you just described. I mean, we're talking about a guy who didn't have a whole lot of ribbies last year, but like you said, he got off to a pretty slow start. Other than last year and his sort of rookie season, right? He played 14 games in 2010 and then stayed down in the minor leagues for an entire year after that. But after his rookie-ish season in Oakland in 2012, besides those two seasons, he's never had fewer than 93 RBI, peaking at 123. So,
well, no, I mean even last year. Last year looking at 78.
Right, but last year he still smacked 33 home runs.
Yeah.
In 415 plate appearances, or 415 at bats. I mean, even after a slow start, he still managed to climb his way back up to a 270 batting average, 385 on base, and an OPS of 944, which I don't think that either of us looking at him before the break, season. Right, and I don't think that either of us looking at him before the break would have looked at him and said, well, this guy's going to have a 944 OPS by the end of this season. Near a 1. I don't think we would predict him to be anywhere near a 1. By the end of the season.
I mean, and again, you're seeing, aside from those first two seasons that you mentioned, 10 and 12, obviously, disregarding 11 when he stayed down in the minor leagues, he came up about halfway through 2012, 75 games. Last year was the first time in 5 seasons. Well, you could say 6 seasons if you're counting it, but I'm sorry, 5 where he didn't crest 155 played games. 158, right. 13, 14, and 15, 155, and 16, and 113 last year. So, yes, numbers are low. But, as I look at it, I mean, that is the big thing, is that, he missed a good chunk of time. So, I mean, great for him. Jays, I think this might be one of those things where, you don't have a ton on your roster right now, so you can probably afford to overpay for him a little bit and maybe try and get some good grace in negotiations and free agency. But I think $23 million might be a little bit over the top, even for Josh Donaldson. Well, had you gone to arbitration, probably would have been down below, at or below 20. So, they might just be spending extra money in the hopes of keeping him, which I still think is going to be a long shot.
I think they're doing the same thing that they did last year when they offered the big contract to avoid basically trying to get the franchise tag to
to Bautista,
and he turned him down.
Right.
And then they got him for less money. I think they're doing the same thing here, right? They're trying to say, look, we want you here. You're a good ball player. We don't want to go into arbitration with you. So here we're going to offer you this huge amount of money and take it or leave it. And,
right.
Of course, Josh Donaldson's smarter than Jose Bautista, and he said, no, okay, I'll take it. And maybe they are trying to keep him. I think that the Blue Jays have to know at this point that keeping him through free agency is not just a long shot. I think it's a slim to none chance at this point.
Agreed.
But
go ahead. I'll say another team that ended up being able. I swear, man. I feel like we're doing the news like in the Middle East and in New York. We got like just a little bit of lag that we keep on talking. All right, go ahead. What you're going to say? Because I'm about to move on to Kris Bryant here as soon as you're done, because that deal just about as stupid as Josh Donaldson's, and could help the Cubs go a long way in keeping him and maybe having a chance at one of the guys we just talked about.
I think it's every bit as stupid since they both set records. But I think that the Blue Jays might be looking at this with the idea that, hey, we're going to give him a whole crap load of money, and maybe when we give him this whole crap load of money, then next year we can offer him a bigger crap load of money, and he'll be like, well, you guys gave me a crap load of money last year, maybe it's worth staying again. But I think Josh Donaldson is the type of ball player, especially after playing in Oakland, the lean, mean streets of Oakland, where he maxed out at $500K, that he's the type of ball player that's going to want to get paid for his abilities and go somewhere where he has an opportunity to win a championship.
And Kris Bryant is the same way, like we just mentioned, and they agreed to a $10.85 million setting a new. I mean, that's a new mark for a first-time arbitration-eligible player. Obviously, Kris Bryant is going to be, one of the he is one of the faces of baseball as it sits today. I think the thing here, yes, what they paid him for a first-time player was massive. Probably, I would say $2 or $3 million over what might have been decided in an arbitration hearing. However, here's what I think we can't forget. Do you recall Bryant's rookie year?
I do.
And the drama that surrounded his rookie year?
I don't so much remember the drama.
So, obviously, he was in spring training, and, I mean, it wasn't a doubt in hell that he was going to make that ball club. So, what Theo did is, instead of putting him on the opening day roster, sent him down for 13 or 14 games, and basically they bring him back up. You lose, a couple of weeks of his productivity in the big leagues, but then it pushed out, giving them control of him basically for another year, which obviously, I mean, there was I believe a grievance got filed through the union. It was a whole big stir and really hacked him off, which, I mean, to take a kid that young and already kind of put the taste in his mouth of, hey, it's a business. Well, don't forget, you've got to do business with this guy in a couple of years, and now you've won a World Series. You're expected to put together a pretty big run here. So I think this is one of those things where the Cubs wanted to show good faith. Like you said, hey, look, we want you here. We get you might be kind of hacked off. Let's iron this out. Here's the deal. Let's work on something bigger. And like you mentioned to me off air, and we talked about him earlier, they asked Kris Bryant, of the possibility of having two Las Vegas born and raised superstars on the Cubs here in the next couple of seasons. And while he did his best to kind of steer clear of the question and not give a whole ton of deep credence to it, he definitely didn't ward off the possibility of a Kris Bryant and Bryce Harper led Cubbies team.
And probably the scariest Cubs team, scarier than the Cubs World Series team, in my opinion, with Bryce Harper out there.
Yeah, but Javi Baez, Contreras, you figure out your pitching.
Yeah. I think that what the Cubs are doing, I mean, because they didn't just break the record for first-year arbitration-eligible players with Kris Bryant. They shattered it. And they smashed it. And by a couple mil. And I guess when we're talking about first-year arbitration, I think it was like 8.5 or something like that was the previous record.
Well, no, it was 10 to Ryan Howard back in 2010.
Was it 10?
Yeah.
Was
Howard
it 10?
got 10 million.
I thought they said it was 8.5.
No, I see 10 million here, so it would have just been $850K.
Yeah,
so,
it was 10. What?
I
had 8.5.
I thought I lost you there. I'm like, oh crap, we're on the air. But no, it's a lot of money.
They did break the record. But didn't they also break another record with him as far as rookie pay goes recently as well? Didn't he make well over?
It might have been something last year. I would have to
well over the rookie pay. Yeah, right. So he made $1.05 million in his first last year, which is a record, which was also another record that they broke. And I think realistically, when you look at the situation, you look at what happened with him in 2015, his rookie year, you can look at these record-breaking deals that they're making with Kris Bryant from two sides. One, they realize that Kris Bryant is going to be the face of baseball, or a face of baseball, for a long time.
Right.
And that they need to apologize to Kris Bryant for how they treated him in his rookie year. And they make up for that by giving him the kind of huge payday that he expects to get had he been arbitration eligible last year instead of this year.
Right.
And I think they've done that. And I think that goes a long way towards the good faith thing where Kris Bryant maybe next year goes, okay, I want you to offer me as much money as you possibly can, and even if it's not the absolute highest, maybe I consider staying here.
Right, and I think he seems happy. In Chicago, it's hard not to be happy when Joe Maddon's your manager. A guy who like Terry Francona, is great at kind of just feeling the pulse of that locker room. So in that clubhouse. So yeah, I think it is good for him. It's not surprising. I'm glad I'm glad it didn't go to the hearing. Obviously, he's a piece that's important to them, and a piece that will continue to be hopefully with that ball club for a long time. Ironically enough, we talk about a guy trying to be with one club for a long time, and then there's Adrian Gonzalez, who has seemingly bounced from the Dodgers to the Braves to be released. Now he's going to sign with the Mets. He has had kind of an inauspicious
all in the span of
2018 offseason. Yeah, it has not been great for him. And a season shortened last year in LA due to injury, and then there was injury, and then there was Cody Bellinger. So I mean,
right.
That's pretty much where we go with this. It's like, all right, yeah, you're not feeling good. Okay, we're gonna get you better. Bellinger's good. Bellinger's really good. Bellinger's rookie of the year. Go, Adrian. You're not coming back.
Yeah, hey.
Have a nice day.
Here's the thing.
That's pretty much how I kind of figure that went down. So, the guy's been in the league 14 years. Last year, the first time in, good Lord, 12 seasons, which is insane to think about. In 12 seasons that he has been below 150 games played. Think about that. He played 71 games last year, and I'm saying 150 just as kind of just a benchmark point, but really you could say he hasn't been lower than 156 games.
Yeah, 156. Oh, he's a workhorse, man.
He is.
I mean, he really is.
So, the Mets are they're looking for something. And again, we're going to talk about this. We're not going to get too much into this signing because we're going to get into this more so when we talk about our team breakdowns.
Hold on. Because we talked about it would be better for the Mets to put Jay Bruce at first base.
Yeah.
Have him play infield, get reps in the infield. But you sign Adrian Gonzalez. Well, Adrian Gonzalez plays one position.
Right.
And
but
yes, he's played right field. Yes, he's played right field on and off as needed, but Adrian Gonzalez is a first baseman.
And I think what you're coming to,
that's not an American League team, so he's not a DH.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's see. Let's see first off how the physical goes.
Right.
They're pretty much paying him the league minimum, which is $545,000, which that's usually kind of indicative that you are on. I mean, you are basically back within the home plate circle on the way sliding across the box to. I mean, your career is on its last couple of steps. Dominique Smith, like you said, still a guy who's going to compete for that job. I think it's one of those things that if you have Adrian there, yeah, maybe you move Bruce kind of back and forth. I hate to say it, man. I really don't know. I will be surprised, and it sounds sad, but I will be surprised if Adrian Gonzalez is still on that roster come opening day. I just don't know at 36 years old. He's 35 right now. He'll be 36 in May. I just don't know that a 36-year-old Adrian Gonzalez, I don't know. I really don't think he'll end up making that roster. There's very little commitment to him. It gives him a chance to see what Smith can do. You have time to work Bruce over at first, see how well it goes. If they're both playing better and producing more than him, and you're already committed to Jay Bruce and Dominique Smith as someone you think might be the future of this team, long term as a young 22-year-old prospect. I don't know, man. It's hard for me to think that Agon ends up making that ball club throughout the whole year.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be an everyday guy. I think if you see him in 71 games again this year, then they're being generous with playing time for him. I think expect to see him DH when they play American League teams, and expect to see him probably fill in as a first baseman when Bruce isn't either in the outfield or taking a day off. But yeah,
and I think Dominic Smith's performance in spring training will go a long way into deciding what will happen with Gonzalez. Because if you have better depth in the outfield, then maybe you kind of do a first base by committee kind of idea between Bruce and Gonzalez. And we'll see how Sandy Alderson and Mickey Callahan do that. I mean, it'll be be interesting to see what Mickey does. Leaving pitching coach for the Indians and coming into Queens. Lastly, before we go, a tip of the cap to Justin Morneau. He is retiring from Major League Baseball. He will become a special assistant in the Minnesota Twins organization. A longtime player for the Twinkies. He, played for Minnesota all the way up into the middle of 2013 before he was traded to Pittsburgh, and then in Colorado for a couple of years, and then a cup of coffee this year, 58 games with the White Sox. Man, this guy, when he was on, he was really good. An MVP in 2006, Silver Slugger 2 times, a 4-time All-Star. Crazy thing is he didn't make the All-Star team his MVP year, but made it the next 4 years after, which is just kind of odd to me overall. But he'll retire as a 281 hitter. Goes 247 RBIs. 247 home runs. He's 15 RBI shy of a grand. Not going to be obviously a Hall of Fame player, but a guy who will definitely should have his number retired at Target Field in Minnesota. He was kind of the lifeblood of that team for a long time, and we saw that team pretty solid. They were a solid team, especially with when Joe Mauer was really young and kind of finding his way in the major leagues. So a concussion, he took a knee to the head on a play at second, a bad concussion, and he was really just never the same. So it's an unfortunate way to see him go. Mike Matheny, I believe, was kind of the same way with concussions, but a tip of the cap to a very long 14-year, and I think you can say with for the most part, yeah, the injuries hurt, but big picture, if you take the injuries aside and the time that was missed, all in all, a pretty damn successful career for Justin Morneau.
I agree. And, he's one of those guys that probably not everybody's heard of him. Maybe, guys that have been really paying attention to baseball for the last 20 years. But like you said, after the injury, he just sort of fell off the map, which is sad to see from a guy who finished first in MVP voting in 2005 and second in MVP voting again a couple years later, 2006, and then a couple years later, second in MVP voting. I mean, right. Good for him on a great 14-year career. Definitely has earned whatever honors the Twins decided to give him, plus the job that they're going to give him. Yep. And no, he's not a Hall of Famer, but I think this is the end of a good career, a good baseball player's career. Maybe a little more prematurely, or maybe not with the fanfare that it deserves.
Right. And a guy who swung a big stick, and with a team that's young and trying to kind of continue to find their foothold in the American League Central, which, I mean, I think the Indians still are going to be the favorite, but that AL Central was ripe for strife. We saw that last year. And, with not knowing what's going to happen, well, I think we know what's going to happen with the Tigers and the White Sox this year. They're probably going to be down at the bottom. We'll see what the Royals can do. We'll discuss that, obviously, as we get into our team breakdowns. That's going to be coming to you the next couple of weeks, guys. We are going to start breaking down every division. And then, of course, once we get into spring training, which I believe Chris has the calendar, we are, just under the 27 days battle? Is that what you said?
It is. Let me get you the exact. I mean, not that I'm counting or anything. I would never.
You're not.
I would never
want to.
I would never want to count. But if I was going to fancy a guess as to how long it was until spring training started, I would say, 29 days, 1 hour, 39 minutes, something like that.
So, yeah, I mean, a ton of stuff coming, guys. That's obviously we'll get into our predictions for the year and just see how wrong we are from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Although we did pretty good this year, but I think it was, a lot of it was laid out for us. But a ton of stuff coming. We got a bunch more for you. The Hall of Fame voting should be announced here in just a few weeks, I believe. Of course, the NFL Hall of Fame voting comes out in about 3 weeks. And, of course, we will talk about the championship games as well. I do have to ask you before we go, man, it was a fun weekend of football. Somehow the Jaguars from my home state managed to just embarrass the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Tennessee Titans had no business being in Foxborough. I think we can go ahead and kind of – but, I mean, I think the game everyone really is talking about aside, I think the Jaguars game is one that everyone's talking about, but I don't know if you heard they're calling
Stephon Diggs.
I don't know if you're –
That's what everybody's talking about.
Have you heard what they're calling that pass?
No.
The Hail Millie? So I don't know if you saw, but there was a fan, a Vikings fan. She turns 100 years old this year. Has been a Vikings fan for, decades, obviously. And the Vikings gave her tickets to the game. So, of course, tickets to the game, down. Then, of course, you get this crazy pass and they win the game. So now instead of a Hail Mary, they're calling it the Hail Millie. Well, there was a picture of Roger Goodell talking to her during the game. And apparently he fined her for undisclosed detrimental conduct to the league. I'm just kidding. He did not fine her. He actually gave her Super Bowl tickets because Super Bowl is being played in Minnesota this year. And, yes, it is very possible as the Vikings go into Philadelphia, the Eagles will be the number one seed underdogs in back-to-back years. I think the first time in history that has ever happened. And a very good possibility of the Vikings being the first ever team in history to host a Super Bowl and play in it, not counting the Miami Dolphins from Ace Ventura. Laces out, Dan. Laces out.
Oh, man. I can't believe you went there, but you did. You went there.
Oh, 100%. And the sad thing is
by
I
the
heard
way,
somebody else make the joke, and I hated it. I'm like, such an awful joke. And then I kind of couldn't help myself.
But by the way, I have a friend who lives in NOLA, and he said that he's not a Saints fan. He's not from there, but he lives there. He moved there after he got out of the military.
Not a D-backs fan, but you live in Arizona.
Right. So he moved to NOLA, and
just call it New Orleans. Just stop it. Just call it New Orleans.
I'm not. I'm going to call it NOLA. That's what it's called, bro. He was there last night, and he's downtown, at a bar watching the game, and he said it was.
He's in the drinking district.
When they scored the go-ahead touchdown, it was the loudest 10 minutes that he's ever experienced, immediately following the Stephon Diggs reception, followed by absolute silence. He said, I've never seen an entire city have their soul ripped from them, but it was sort of sad.
Thank you, Case Keenum. Good night. No, it was a great game. Should be a lot of fun. I'll go ahead and ask you, since we will probably be doing the show either during or sometime right after, and hell, even if we do it before the playoff games. Let's be honest, none of y'all fools going to be listening to us during football because, well, to be honest, we wouldn't be listening to us during the AFC and the NFC championship game. So I will go ahead and ask you now, the Patriots up against the Jaguars. Who do you have?
Oh. Well, regardless of who I think is going to win, I want the Jags to win because I hate the Patriots. So I got the Jags all the way. And in fact, this year is the year I think that the Jags might be able to do it, especially after the way they just – I won't say they trounced the Steelers last night because they didn't. But what they did do was every time the Steelers made a move, the Jaguars were like, nah, that's not what's going to happen. Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to go ahead and answer right back. And if they can continue that ability to answer right back, then you got to give them at least a shot to beat the Patriots. A better shot than I think any other team in the AFC had.
Yeah, I'm from Florida. I'm going to go with the Pats. Because my wife is a Patriots fan, but mainly because I think and to me it comes down to not Bortles, not Brady. It comes down to the offensive line of the Patriots. If they can go ahead and keep that rush from the Jags from getting there and keep Brady upright, because we saw what happened in the Super Bowl when he got hit, he was bad. When they were able to keep him upright, he was able to dice him apart. Brady's been good against top defenses. We saw him almost beat Denver a couple of years ago for Super Bowl 50, or to make it to Super Bowl 50. They came up just short. We've seen them do obviously very well against they won Super Bowls against the Falcons, against the Seahawks. So I think it's going to be a very close game. I don't think it's going to be pretty by any stretch, but I do think that experience in Tom Brady, as long as they can keep him upright, will be good. That secondary of the Jags is very good. If the Jags can get a four-man rush and get pressure on Brady and drop those other seven into coverage, it's going to make life very hard on the Patriots. So yeah, we split it there, but I think it's going to be a very entertaining game. On the other side, the Eagles and the Vikings in Philadelphia. Who you got?
Vikes.
Agreed.
I got the Vikings. I think what we saw yesterday from the Vikings is that they can make up for their defense where their defense lacks with the arm and the ability of Case Keenum and Stephon Diggs.
and some of those
to be honest,
scary throws that Keenum made. If he tries to do that against Jacksonville, if Jacksonville makes it to the Super Bowl, there's a real possibility that somehow, some way, the Jags win a Super Bowl. And then Tom Coughlin's got to figure out, do I pull a Baltimore and just pay Bortles a crap ton of money and then hamstring my team the way that Joe Flacco has made the Ravens do? Or do I say smart, pick up his option for next year and go from there?
Well,
easy. Pick up the option, because Blake Bortles has proven to you that he is not the quarterback we've seen. We have seen something, but I'm not really sure what it is that we've seen from Blake Bortles. He has been hot or cold, but he's been hot when he has to be. So we'll see what happens, man. But yeah, I agree. I think we both have Vikings, and then you took the Jags, and I got the Pats, and we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a great postseason. Really, what I'm really looking forward to at this point is that, Vikings or Eagles, we get a fresh face in the NFC to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary because you're realizing that if Brady doesn't make it, you have two kind of junky, not really tested quarterbacks. But I think the beauty is that it'll become a game where highly unlikely the quarterback wins an MVP.
Any of the other three quarterbacks are untested.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So without Brady, it's gonna be a Super Bowl where I think you can almost take the MVP, and it won't be a quarterback, which is kind of which kind of makes it fun because that means you're looking for somebody else to make the big play. Right. I would love to see the Jags defense make it into Super Bowl. I think it would just be a blast to see a defense like that and see what they can do. But either way, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a really good weekend of football. Guys, appreciate you sticking with us. Hope you all have had a good week. Chris said we are getting ever so close to the opening of spring training. It is just around the corner, a little less than a month away. Enjoy. Hope you all have a great week. We will see you back here next week. I'm going to start bringing you team predictions and our breakdowns. For Chris, I'm Graham, and everybody here at the Grueling Truth Network, thanks for seeing us so long. We will catch you all next week here on Out of Left Field.